The TJSG looks like Scott Thomason.
It is.
Hi, Scott.
Hey, Barry. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
I didn't send it. I didn't send him a meeting. Maybe it was the auto thing. So is he not on?
Scott, are you here for public comment? Or are you in the meeting?
Hold on a second. I feel like this is supposed to.
Tara, are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And public comment.
Okay.
Good evening. We're dealing with a few little technical issues here.
Okay.
We'll get them sorted out.
Bill's looking for the same link. So let me.
Sure.
Recording in progress.
Okay.
I think we had some success.
Yeah.
Shall we see Holly there? Okay. Got Mark. We got, let's see, I'm counting noses here all over the place. 1, 2, 3, 4. I do think we have a quorum. We can get started. Very good. Okay. So the special Joint City Council Open Space Advisory Committee for the City of American Canyon for May 31st, 2022, to order. We have a flag, please. Please rise to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Usually have a roll call here. Is there a reason why we don't?
I have a meeting announcement, Mayor Garcia, and then
Okay.
we have the roll call after that.
All right. We're still doing meeting announcements.
Well, just because this one is Zoom only.
Very good. I got you down that one. Okay, so that information is available on the first page of the agenda. The details are there to participate. Roll call.
Teresa, before we jump into roll call, if you wouldn't mind promoting Miriam from the audience.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Council member. Let me find her. Oh, no.
City Attorney Ross would also appreciate the promotion. I'll leave that up to you as to whether you want to do that.
Okay, welcome, Miriam.
I'm joking, Bill.
Thank you. Okay, we're good.
Mr. Ross, good to have you here with us. All right. I think we have a quorum all the way around, all present. Yes, everyone present and counted for it. Thank you. Okay. Roll call, please.
Okay, for City Council, we have Mayor Garcia.
Here.
Vice Mayor Abdamas.
Here.
Councilmember Joseph.
Here.
Councilmember Oro.
Here.
Councilmember Washington.
Here.
And for Open Space Advisory Committee, we have Chair Nance Matson.
Here.
Vice Chair Artis.
Present.
Committee Member Christian.
Here.
Committee Member Hester Williams.
Here.
and committee member McClinton Horner.
Here.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Have we received any public comment on items not on the agenda?
We have not received written comment.
Mhm.
Let me see. Participants, I have one hand raised. Let me get them on. Hi, if you could state your name, please.
Yes, my name is Scott Thomason.
Okay,
can
go
every-
ahead with your comment.
Great. Well, at first I want to thank the City Council and the Open Space Committee members for giving me a chance to speak tonight. Again, my name is Scott Thomason and I have lived in American Canyon for 14 years. I'm a retired school teacher and taught 14 years in the Napa School District and 12 at Donaldson Way Elementary here in American Canyon. You may also know me from being on the board of the American Canyon Community and Parks Foundation. However, tonight I'm speaking as a private citizen about an issue that's not on tonight's agenda, but as I understand it, will be discussed at the June 6th City Council meeting. And that issue is the proposed Sphere of Influence SOI amendment for the property located at 1661 Green Island Road. The owners have stated that the property can no longer be used for the production of wine grapes or any other agricultural use because the use of recycled water on the property has increased soil salinity to such a degree that the land can no longer be used for any agricultural use. Other groups, however, including the Napa County Farm Bureau, the Napa Valley Grape Growers, the Napa Valley Vintners, and wine growers of Napa County all strongly disagree with this assertion by the owners and have put their objections in writing to the Local Agency Formation Commission of Napa County, LAFCO. In addition to the concerns raised by the above agricultural groups, my concern is that if approved, the SOI amendment would be used to A, declare the property inappropriate for agricultural use, itself a false premise, B, ask the City of American Canyon to annex the property, and C, subdivide and rezone this property to build winery warehouses. The property in question is located near the wetlands trail between Green Island Road and the American Canyon Waste Treatment Plant. Replacing this beautiful open space with winery warehouses would not only have an adverse impact on the surrounding environment, including plant and animal life, but it would also change the landscape of this area, which is part of the innate appeal that attracts thousands of people to this trail each year. If the City of American Canyon feels that more winery warehouses are needed, surely there are better locations than along the wetlands trail. And I want to thank you again for allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other speakers?
I have no other hands raised.
Very good. Thank you. We'll close public comment on items not on the agenda. Move on with our agenda. Agenda changes. If not, we'll move on into our business item. Seeing none, hearing none. Go on to our business item. It's item number 3. Reauthorize the Open Space Advisory Committee and draft fiscal year 22-23 work plan. Mr. Hawley.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council, and thank you, Chair and committee members for joining this meeting tonight. I'm going to take a few moments and kind of summarize the staff report and the information in the staff report with the goal of hopefully having an understanding, a kind of baseline understanding of where we are and how we are set up and structured as an organization. And then it's from that level baseline that we can begin to have a conversation about the work plan for the Open Space Advisory Committee and the proposed resolution to reauthorize and expand their purview. as I noted in the staff report, we've had beginning these conversations with both Open Space Advisory Committee and with the Parks and Community Services Commission, PCS, over the last couple of months. And we had 2 meetings jointly with those 2 bodies and are now beginning to have individual meetings with the City Council. And so we're meeting tonight with the City Council in OSAC. I'm envisioning probably in July, perhaps August, a meeting with the City Council and PCS in a similar way to talk about their work plan. This is coming out of an effort to what I characterize as professionalizing the city organization. And I believe that's what the council has tasked me with. And the council has specifically asked that we really formalize the relationship or the intertie between the council and its advisory committees and commissions, that there should be a reoccurring and regular interaction between the governing body, the City Council, and those appointees to the various commissions, so that everybody's on the same page and everyone understands what they're to be looking at or working on. And that hasn't always been the past practice. Although I think it was intended, it hasn't always been the past practice. So part of what we're trying to do is to establish that reconnection and to ensure that it happens prospectively. We talk about the staff report is broken up into kind of the history of the Open Space Advisory Committee, the council manager form of government and their relationships to citizen advisory committees, or CACs as we're coining them, future roles and responsibilities of Open Space Advisory Committee, and some next steps. And there's 5 attachments to the packet. The Open Space Advisory Committee was formed in 2005. The authorizing resolution was 2005-83, and it's attachment 1. And at the time, the council sought to recognize the effort of some local residents around open space and their desire to improve access to the Napa River, the wetlands, and the new open space. And they wanted to preserve and enhance the open space around American Canyon. A lot of the initial purpose of OSAC, as described in that 2005 resolution, has been achieved. It's really the hard work of the committee members, former and current council members, city staff, along with state, local, and federal partners and private partnerships. The new open space is now open and accessible, as is the wetlands. And really this success is shared and recognized as a regional amenity and a regional attraction. And everyone really joins in their success. It wasn't any one person who was responsible for this. It was really a team effort. And we all should be really proud of the efforts that have been made. We'll also note that the OSAC also has a role related to bicycle planning. There's not, at least we couldn't find a specific resolution that designated OSAC as a bicycle advisory committee. There was mention of this in the city's bicycle plan from 2012, and that was again recently adopted. And it notes that both the Parks and Open Space Advisory Committee just serve as the Bicycle Advisory Committee. That's having a designated bike committee is one of the requirements a lot of times for different grant applications. And so having a committee designated that way helps with grant funding sometimes. In kind of exploring the council manager form of government and citizen advisory committees, we wanted to bring in some outside resource, professional resource from the industry, relying upon documents from the International City County Management Association, the ICMA. They had a very informative bulletin they had put together entitled Effective Citizen Advisory Committees. We also relied on a publication from the University of Northern Carolina School of Government that talks about creating and maintaining effective local government citizen advisory committee, and that's attachment 5 to the packet. And to make sure that we're all having the same understanding of our form of government and the relationship between council and staff and the committees, we go into some depth on pages 5 and 6 and 7 in the staff report, talking about the council manager form of government. In short, the council is elected to serve as the legislative body. It appoints a chief executive officer known as the city manager, who oversees the day-to-day municipal operations. They draft the budget and implement and enforce the council's policies and legislative initiatives. Many of the council manager form of governments, which is the most common form of local government in America, most of them feature a mayor who represent the city on state and national stages, and they have signing authority and operate with a few other privileges than the council members, but they generally don't operate with any kind of veto authority or 2 votes or other thing like that. If you get into different other forms of government where, like a strong mayor type of government, for example, those situations, the mayor does have an outside influence on the council, and they bring in their own staff, oftentimes their own appointees, to run key positions. So that's a different form of government. In our form of government, the mayor serves to represent the city on a national stage or state or local stage. They often will meet with constituents or meet with mayors of other cities or towns, but they don't have any other powers than the other council members. The city manager's role is to work with the city council. They work together to enact budgets, to draft and enforce the legislation, and they work together to provide city services. It's the council that makes those decisions and then hands it over to the city manager to implement. But we work together to develop and identify what the community's mission and vision and values are. We work together to create strategies, goals, and key initiatives and tasks to implement. And attachment 2, which is shown on page 14, I think it is in the packet. Attachment 2 is a nice graphic that kind of shows this hierarchy of vision, mission, and values, goals, strategies, initiatives, and tasks. And these were developed, the vision, mission, and strategic values were developed with quite a bit of community input in the mid 2010s, 2014, 2015. And from there, the strategies and key initiatives evolve over time. And that's something we work together to develop. The city manager role is comparable to the CEO, corporate CEO, and the council will be comparable to the board of directors if you wanted to have more of a private sector kind of analogy. The city council is accountable to the electorate. Their elections held every 2 years, and a rotating amount of the council stands for election every 2 years, and the city manager is accountable to the council. Individual staff members are then accountable to the city manager. The reason that the council manager form of government is so popular is because it was really indicative of a trend towards professionalism and away from the kind of political gamesmanship that comes when you have elected folks bringing in their own appointees to various positions. You see that in bigger cities where they'll bring in appointees and you have this sort of system that maybe isn't the most efficient, but the council manager form of government is meant to insulate implementation of policy from the actual politics that happen at the elected level. We start talking a little bit on page 7 about citizen advisory committees and their benefit and their importance. And we talk about ways to maximize their effectiveness and their productivity. In general, citizen advisory committees can be really helpful where there's an issue that may be difficult for the council to reach a final decision on. The city council, when it reaches a final decision, its decision is final. And debate can be ended by council procedure and then a vote taken and the decision is final. And sometimes members of the public or members of the council feel like they would still like to debate an issue more or evaluate issue more, but it's already been decided. So there's not that opportunity. So one tactic for being able to make sure all the voices are heard is to appoint a citizens committee to tackle a particular issue. And the citizens committee doesn't make any decisions. They just evaluate an issue. They bring up different aspects of it and are looked at, and they offer perspectives on it, and they offer advice to the council on that issue, but they don't actually make any of the decisions. None of their decisions are final or anything like that, but it provides kind of a pressure relief when you can have a committee talking about issues without having the pressure of making a final decision. And so that's one of the real benefits of being able to talk about particular issues without the pressure of making a decision. There are some recent examples where the council had lengthy debates on issues, and in these cases didn't actually have a citizens committee, but you could envision them. That would have been an appropriate role. For example, the fuel station moratorium, recreational cannabis, and term limits were all very high profile, wide ranging issues. And in this case, the council felt comfortable of itself debating those issues, and we brought back those issues to council and had a lot of public engagement at the city council on those issues. But there was an example where they could have been delegated to a citizens advisory committee. An example in the recent past of a very successful, in my mind, very successful citizens advisory committee was around the water rates back in 2015, for example. And there, 17, 18 some odd members of the community came together and were appointed by the council to study the water rate issues, and then eventually brought forward some recommendations to the city council. And we, in that particular case, there was a deliberate attempt to bring folks of opposing views and differing views on the issue of water rates and to explain the information to them, and then have them provide that feedback to the city council. And we think it was successful because there was a lot of agreement was reached eventually on what the pathway was to be. But I think you can envision, had we had all those discussions in public in front of the council, the 4 or 5 meetings, it would have been probably more contentious and a lot more difficult, because we really had to get into the heart of the issue, into some fine detail. So in that case, it was very successful. Citizen advisory committees don't have to just be for one-time issues. They can be ongoing committees of great importance. And so we distinguish those. Sometimes we have an ad hoc citizen advisory committee, or sometimes we have standing citizen advisory committees. The one that I mentioned on water rates was an ad hoc committee. In the case of open space advisory committee, they are what's known as a standing committee. And that matters from a couple of perspectives. The first of which is kind of related to the bureaucracy. For a standing committee, they are subject to the Brown Act. They are subject to Form 700s and disclosures and those sorts of things. Whereas an ad hoc committee of limited purpose and duration is not subject to those other things. So the process of preparing for an ad hoc committee is different and less than it is for a standing committee. And it's important to note that in all cases, the council isn't forming a committee to act as a buffer for complaints. The process for residents or businesses bringing issues or complaints to the city council is to bring it to the city council. Ideally, the path of resolution starts with the appropriate staff, or is raised up a level to myself. But if it's unresolvable or what have you, then it would go to the city council. It's not appropriate for a council to create a committee just to handle complaints, because they don't want to deal with the complaints themselves. Part of being accountable to the public is to hear what issues they have, and whether it be through the staff process or directly at the podium at a council meeting, it's appropriate for the council to engage those that they are accountable to, rather than to create kind of a committee to buffer against complaints. One of the things we talk about as we talk about an expanded and extended role for the Open Space Advisory Committee is making sure that we recognize some of the difficulties that can occur with standing committees. And the notion of a standing committee is really reflective of the need for standing issues, and that there be a constant either turnover or a constant list of issues that require a whole standing committee to be there to address. One-time issues require an ad hoc committee, or can require an ad hoc committee. But having a committee to address a one-time issue and then have it continue to extend creates problems, because the committee members all want to be helpful and they all want to be part of a solution, but you end up sometimes creating things for them to do to continue them moving on. And so that can create challenges. There are other challenges that can be created where if there's not a clear understanding about how the committee is supposed to operate. In the case of the Parks and Community Services Commission, there are actually what are known as guidelines. There's 2003, the council adopted guidelines for that commission. There are no such guidelines or bylaws or anything for the Open Space Advisory Committee. And so why that can create confusion is because those guidelines or bylaws really create the paradigm on how the committee is going to operate and what kinds of issues they're going to talk about, what kinds of issues has the council delegated to them to explore. And it can be a challenge. These citizen advisory committees can be a challenge too if everyone is not understanding the lines of authority or the lines of accountability. And again, the citizens committees, the purpose of them are to advise the city council. They don't provide direction to city staff. They don't provide direction to the manager. They provide advice to the city council, but the city council doesn't have to accept their advice, doesn't have to take it or implement any of it. And again, like I said, staff and the manager don't report to those bodies, and so they don't take direction from those bodies as far as work plans or things to do. One of the things that we did note is that that OSAC would benefit from having guidelines or something comparable to what the PCS does, because absent that, there's not enough of a construct necessarily to have efficient committee. It's customary for the city council to provide a liaison to citizen advisory committees. In the case of the Planning Commission, I delegate Brent to our Community Development Director to be that staff liaison. In the case of Parks and Community Services, I have delegated the Park and Rec Director, Dr. Akita, who's with us this evening, and that has been the same for the Open Space Advisory Committee. But part of the direct connection of having the City Council meet with its advisory committees on a regular basis is to really frame out the scope of work for the upcoming year. Here's what your work plan for the year is. Here's the things we want to delegate to you. And here's our commitment to provide those staff resources to implement or to do those activities. Because there can be a lot of friction that's created if a committee has felt like it's come up with a really great work plan and a lot of really great things that they think are really important and really needed, and the council hasn't bought off or blessed all those or allocated those resources, there's this unmet expectation amongst the committee members that they have all these really great ideas, but the council isn't providing the resources. And so it's incumbent upon staff to be that communicator, to say, here's what the work plan is, here's our time with the council to set that work plan. And that work plan really doesn't change throughout the year. I guess on occasion, there might be a need to change that, but it would really take some council approval if there was going to be a substantive change to an annual work plan. And I realize, our past practice hasn't always been very formal in bringing these work plans. It's an oversight that I take responsibility for, and it's an issue that we are correcting tonight and with the other bodies moving forward. But the council has asked to have this connection to make sure that that they're on the same page and they agree with the work plans that these bodies think are appropriate, and then are committing to the resources in order to make that happen. We met with the Open Space Advisory Committee on May 4th to talk about an annual work plan for fiscal year 22-23. And in discussing that with them and evaluating what the 2005 resolution really said, it really came to the conclusion that that resolution had a lot of boxes checked, a lot of mission accomplished, as I was mentioning earlier. There were still some things that were on there, but in large part, a lot of what that 2005 resolution talked about had been accomplished. And so the committee felt like we really needed to spend some time right-sizing the resolution, correcting it to be prospective for a future activity. And so that's what shows up as a red line in I think it's attachment 4. We took the original 2005 resolution and redlined and edited it. So we're not asking the council to take action on that tonight, but this is an example of what a new reauthorizing resolution might look like. And so after we worked to create that updated resolution, then we worked with the Open Space Advisory Committee to develop a potential work plan itself. And that's what shows up on page 17, right? So page 18, sorry. Yeah, page 18 is what a draft work plan might look like for fiscal year 22-23. Included in that would be updates on the Newell management plan, revisions to the Clark Ranch master plan, efforts around the Eco Center, the Jaeger open space, and volunteer projects. And, let's see what else. Lastly, the new resolution talks about including bicycles, renaming the body to include the word bicycles in it, so it was clear that bicycle planning was a part of the future. And that resolution also adds that as a potential purview. Lastly, just briefly talking about the fiscal impact section. At the moment, in the proposed budget, are resources for staffing these meetings, the meetings of the Open Space Advisory Committee. These were kind of rough estimates. The important thing to note, I would say, is that the Park and Recreation Department only has one salaried position. The rest of the positions are all hourly. And so attending meetings and things like that are all done on overtime. And so that's what the higher hourly rates are based on. The overall cost we estimate to be around $20,000 a year. And that's really just for attending the meetings, preparing the reports, posting the minutes, that sort of thing. That doesn't get into any of the projects or any of the plans that are part of the work plan. That's just the called the staffing cost for the committee. Lastly, in Exhibit 5, I mentioned this document from the University of Carolina School of Government. It really talks about the pluses and minuses and potential pitfalls and community benefits of having citizens advisory committees. And I'm hoping everyone had a chance to read that, because I found it refreshing and really instructive to kind of help coalesce some of our thoughts. In short, if done right and done well with an express purpose, they can be really useful. But if those things aren't carefully managed and frequently updated or without frequent check-ins, then they can be challenging and you may have to be in a period where you regroup. So that's kind of the long and short of it. At this point, Mayor, what I was intending to do was to bring this back to council and to see what some of the council members' thoughts were. And then I felt like you might want to check with the Open Space Advisory Committees and see what some of their thoughts were as well.
Absolutely, sure.
I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for bringing us up to date on what's going on. Certainly, the Open Space Advisory Committee has done an enormous job and contributed some pretty incredible results for American Canyon. When you think about what we have with access to Newell open space, I mean, it used to be once a year, courtesy of our fire chief, we'd be able to get up there. Now we have access, well, limited to any wildfire restrictions, but we do have access to that area. And it's been a great asset for the city. Mostly, maybe we also have visitors likewise who come and value that. And the wetlands, my goodness, that was one time you could walk by it, and that was the wetlands out there. When we finally got access from the Waste Management Authority, I thank my colleague Tom Barty from the city of Vallejo, who helped me get that rolling. But now we have an open space out there that people have a different experience when they can get out and participate in it. They can hike. That everybody begins to take ownership of that and values it. And that was a major contribution, likewise, of the Parks and Open Space Open Space Advisory Committee. I do think it's important for us to consider as a standing committee, because a lot of their work certainly points in that direction versus ad hoc. I don't know can't remember back to 2005, our thinking on that. I don't know why it happened. 2005, the city was in that process of having 10,000 new residents in the city. We doubled in size in 10 years. And the Park and Rec Commission was taxed, staff was taxed, not having enough to examine what other potentials were. So hence we formed the Open Space Advisory Committee. And that was just to give their results to the city council, and you can see what happened with Newell in the wetlands. So I think it's been very valuable to have that, the work of the committee do that. And I really appreciate their work. And I thank you for all of that. That's been valuable to the city. If as a council, we decide to move forward as in defining it, you know, choices are ad hoc, as Mr. Holly stated, or something that's standing, meaning there's continued effort out there that we need to be providing input to the council for the benefit of the community as a whole. So that one thing for us to consider as well. I think work plan need to be defined such that we take into consideration. We do have a Park and Recs Commission. We have a Parks and Community Services Commission. We also have a Planning Commission, and those are our valuable assets as well. Things that happen within the city on planning sometimes are framed such that there's a need for open space advisory input to the council, to them. Likewise with the Park and Community Services Commission. One of them would be, say, for example, bicycles. You know, we have bicycle access out to wetlands. We have bicycles within the city. Planning Commission is involved with making sure that we have bicycle access, safe routes as we build things in the city and on our new, whatever funding we can get for our existing streets. So there's some areas where we overlap, and I think a little more clarity on that would be helpful, so that we know that everybody's staying in their lane in terms of what we're trying to contribute to the city's benefit. I think the work plan likewise needs to be reviewed again. Certain areas, I think the Eco Center is certainly been very much involved with the American Canyon Community and Parks Foundation. I'm a ex officio board member on it, and they certainly have their work plan moving forward for that one. So I see that is in ACCPF's domain on that. We could talk about what was the other ones here? Certainly the Jaeger open space, we seem to be moving forward on that in terms of a contribution, but I think the plan for that's would be more on hold in my view until we have a certainty about what the city's acquiring, but certainly opportunity out there in the future. That would be the Jaeger open space. Volunteer projects, certainly. I'm a big advocate of getting people involved in their community. They take value in it. And that's something that they certainly pass along to their family members as well. Key Club at the high school is one that comes out and helps quite a bit when we have projects for them for the benefit of the city. So they'll look at that as well. Clark Ranch, well, there's it's in the city limits already. I think we need to be considering how that might work. And I'm not really clear on that one yet, but I look forward to more discussion on it. With that, I see Councilmember Washington's got his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to everybody, I'll be brief because I kind of want to really hear what the open space folks have to say. But excellent presentation. Jason, I appreciate the data and the stats that you provided. And I just want to first say that each one of the individuals on the OSAC have been the guardians of open space. I believe that the committee is an awesome committee. I believe the committee, when it was first founded, had its purpose with a bunch of passionate people in it. And to Mr. Holly's point, you know, a lot of the reasons why it got started, the mission of the committee has been accomplished. I want to say that the platform was a great platform for me. I was part of the Open Space Committee. It was an educational piece for me taught me a lot about the city, about the importance of open space in our city. So I thank OSAC from my heart for being that educator for me. And it also got me exposure. And I contribute the OSAC committee as one of the reasons that got me elected. So thank you. But I am curious of the purpose moving forward, other than just being the guardians and trying to find different missions to accomplish. So looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Alpadamos.
For all of your work, and Manager Holly for your presentation. I have two clarifying questions before we move forward. On page 10, the fiscal impact, I'm seeing PR director, admin tech, and rec coordinator. I'm seeing that all three are attending meetings, drafting and reviewing staff reports, and meeting with the chair. Is that really happening? Are we having all three do the same thing? And that's why it's costing us $20,000? Or are they really not all three doing the same thing? Because all of them say 10 meetings per year. All of them have the same amount of hours, and then it's just a different hourly cost.
Sure, happy to respond to that question, Vice Mayor Abadamas. Over the last couple of OSAC meetings, it has just been myself and the Park and Rec Director attending the meetings. But and how I built this chart was my understanding of how things were traditionally operated prior to the departure of our former Park and Rec Director, and how things had been set up. So that's my understanding. Again, not all of the meetings were that duration, and probably not all of those meetings attended. It was meant to be a rough estimate.
Not just attended, like meeting with the chair. I don't think that 3 staff members need to meet with the chair, and I don't think that 3 staff members need to draft and review the staff reports. So if that is what was happening in the past, moving forward, my personal opinion is that that definitely needs to change. And then my second clarifying question, and it's kind of minor. It's in the resolution, the draft resolution on page 17. The third bullet point, I feel like needs clarification, because this paragraph, the way I understand it, is saying that the city council endorses the following goals and projects, and then plans such as but not limited to. So is it saying that the city council endorses plans generally, or like what's the involvement of OSAC in that bullet point?
I'm sorry, which page? Okay. Oh yeah.
Right,
That's
page
on
16.
Yes,
16.
right.
Sorry. 1, 2, 3. The third bullet point. I just don't. And that could just be me. Like I just don't understand.
No, I think we kind of built this resolution on the fly, and certainly the committee members can kind of speak to it as well. This is not a perfectly refined resolution. So if we were going to bring back something, we would want to go back and wordsmith things to make complete sense. So, again, we worked with the Open Space Committee at their last meeting to kind of develop these ideas, but they're not, I'll call it 100% flushed out. And so, I think the idea was to really talk about the plans that are out there, the general plan, park and open space master plan, new management plan, the idea that there were these planning efforts. The word endorse really is a holdover from the 2005 resolution, and it may not particularly line up with these bullet points. You kind of have 2005 language with 2022 language, so there's you can start to make an argument that all of these bullet points, when you read the 2005 resolution, you understand what they're saying, but when you're kind of marrying up the future, it may be that recital probably needs a little bit of tweaking. We just didn't go through the effort of wordsmithing that.
Totally understood. Got it. We're not voting on it tonight anyways. I just wanted clarification on what it meant, but thank you. Those are my only clarifying questions for now.
All right, thank you. Looking for any other hands up.
Me?
Yeah, Councilmember Joseph.
Yes, thank you. Well, I want to hear from the commission or the committee members as well. A couple of points though. Number one, as Vice Mayor Abadamas noted, the staff time analysis caught my attention, and I was curious to see if there were that many reports to be written. So I tried to research old OSAC agendas and discovered that all the links are bad on the webpage. So the first technical question is please clean all that up, because there's, at this point, I don't know how to get any of the historical OSAC minute. And
Oh, yeah,
I
that
would
cleaned up. I apologize.
Fair enough. I do appreciate the fact that we're having this joint meeting. It's something, you know, from my perspective, I don't recall the full council being tasked with any issue on this, other than we have on numerous occasions discussed the need for a joint session. And I do believe a joint session with an agenda like tonight, if we just went straight to that, I think this would all be a very positive event, and there wouldn't have been any ruffled feathers that came about based on how it was brought to this point. So I think that simply indicates the idea here is we should have a joint session at least annually, not with just OSAC, but PCS, Planning Commission, all of our regular bodies, because I think we can find out just how far we stray when we don't have those meetings and when there is misunderstandings. And the direct one-on-one is important, because when we rely on intermediaries or a liaison, sometimes the message gets garbled. So other than that, I have probably a radically different view of the relationship and the whole fabric. I'm not going to spend 30 minutes explaining it. I will defer, and like I said, I'd like to hear from the committee members, but I do have a different perspective, and I certainly have some specific issues we need to address after that dialogue. But thank you for having this joint session.
Very good. Any other comments from the City Council? Well, I would say to this point, it sounds like there's identifying that we certainly have a work in progress, and I look forward to completing that. With that, see who would like to start from the Open Space Advisory Committee. Chair, Dan Smatson.
Sure, I'll just do a quick thing. Actually, I want to answer one of Miriam's questions. I realized that there was some text that was in a proposed draft of the resolution or the changes. If you were to insert the words provide advice to the City Council on open space issues as they relate to, and then plans, development, et cetera, it would make sense. And I'm sorry I missed that when Ali sent it to me for review, so I apologize. As you know, all know, we kind of went through a kind of hard process here, but our May meeting, we had a very long meeting, and I apologize to everybody. And we did quickly, well, not quickly, in 4 hours, come up with the revised resolution and the work plan. I did actually, can I just talk about the work plan really quickly, and then I'm going to pass it off to everybody else. Going back to the resolution, it may be that open space wants to play with this a bit more, City Council play with it some more. In some ways, it's like us getting our first view of it. So we can play with that some more. Getting to the work plan, I just was talking to Kristen with PCS this afternoon. And one thing we left off our work plan, because we thought it wasn't ready for prime time, was to revise our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And tell me if I'm wrong, Ellie, but it sounds like it's on their work plan. But we did not put it on our work plan because we thought we weren't dealing with it this year. But there's two big sections in that master plan, parks and open space trails, and bikes and ped circulation, which the Open Space Committee wrote. So I don't know if there's a way to add that into our work plan, or whether we need to come back to add it in. But I just wanted to mention that. And that's it for me right now. Thanks.
Good, thank you. Other members of Open Space Advisory? It's your opportunity. I think we'd appreciate some more. We would all appreciate some more feedback. or aspirations for the committee. Member Hester Williams.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Garcia. First of all, I want to thank the council for having this, and Manager Holly and Director Aikita for having this joint council and OSAC meeting. I do think that it's overdue. I think that it's really necessary to be able to have clarity about the work that OSAC does. I won't say much because I really do think that what's out, other than wordsmithing and tweaking and editing, which I think the document has been going through several drafts, and will continue, probably needs to go through another draft or two. And it's a document that really incorporates the history of OSAC, but also a future direction. And so I'm hoping that that is clear to the council, that the work, although initially the work was set out to be sort of limited to specific projects, that as you said, Mayor Garcia, there has been a stewardship that has continued through the OSAC committee, through OSAC. And that stewardship is something that I personally think is very important. I don't think that it has a time limit, because as long as we have open space, I personally see a need for a liaison between the community, and community members who have attended OSAC meetings have spoken to this. And those who haven't even attended meetings but have seen, as you said, the fruits of the labor and the stewardship of OSAC in the open space that we have, particularly the Newell open space and the wetlands, is very transparent and very much appreciated by the community. We have heard about how much the community appreciate, and also the community coming to the committee with issues, and certainly they could come to the city council for issues. But as Manager Holly said in his description of the history of committees and the structure of city governance, it does seem that I certainly don't have any research to substantiate this, but to me, as a citizen, that citizens feel comfortable coming to OSAC to bring up issues that are important and related to open space. And so, again, I won't go over what's already in the work plan, other than to say, as a committee member and as a citizen, I think that the work is valuable and is ongoing. And is something that we value as committee members, and that we take great pride in the work that we're doing. And I wish that we had more communication with the city council before, so that clarity was established, or the history and the ongoing work really was established and clear and transparent to city council. So that's what really my contribution, what I'd like to say. And I think we are happy to answer any, specific questions that the council members have about the work that we have been doing.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think stewardship, liaison to the community. Thank you for that. Yeah, something to bear in mind. Other members of OSAC? Raise a point. Member Scott Artis. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, thanks everyone for this, and I'm proud to be part of this and giving my input with the city and moving things forward. And as I saw and continue to see this when joining, is that the OSAC really is kind of a conduit. It provides that involvement of the American Canyon community, even further out into the Napa County community, and just the development and the stewardship kind of ethic that is being portrayed by the city by having this this OSAC committee. And I think it's vitally important to successfully protecting the open space resources that we have in the city. And I know that this is just one of those like incredible opportunities for people to have these connections to outdoor trails that oftentimes just go unnoticed. And this is something that I've seen many times in the work that I do, is that we should really be fortunate and not take for granted the incredible trails and open spaces that we have. And I think a key to achieving this and showing that the city has this stewardship ethic ingrained in it is really to have the involvement and with the formation of this OSAC going forward and continuing to go forward. And so the idea is that it brings members of diverse communities together to provide that advice to the city council and to staff for the protection of our open spaces. And it's a really valuable community resource. And I think it's also an opportunity to assist the city council in processes, and like we have with some of the projects going forward, but even projects that maybe we don't know that are on the horizon at this point. And so as Kim was saying as well, I echo that, is that by having kind of an enhanced or an updated resolution, is it provides for the future and a definition of what the OSAC is there to do without necessarily a finite timeline that's built into specific projects that will be completed, but an ongoing opportunity. But being mindful of the cost, as City Manager Hawley has mentioned. So whether that's still monthly or as needed or bi-monthly or however that ends up evolving, I think having an opportunity for the community to be able to address OSAC members, or for us to be ears on the ground and be able to provide that back to the city and the city council, I think is it's an incredible resource that often gives a voice to those who don't think that they have it or understand the entire city process, because that can be confusing for some people, or there's time limitations. People work, have busy schedules, and can't always attend council meetings. So being able to have a conduit and a voice, I think is highly important. And it also reflects, as I said, it kind of reflects that ethic and stewardship ethic of our open spaces from a top down as well as a bottom up perspective. And so I think that the work that was put into this new resolution outlines some of those opportunities to keep it going forward, so that we actually, it's not just, it's not just like terming out, but is providing for an incredible future with all the projects that we have on the horizon. And so I just wanted to echo a lot what Kim had to say, because I think that sums up a lot of what we talked about in our last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. I think the takeaway, at least for me on that, is that conduit that you provide to community for community input. Good to have that. Thank you. Other OSAC members want to talk? Point of view? If not, we'll.
I'll go.
Okay, go ahead, Barry.
I was looking for my raise the hand button. First of all, I just want to say how grateful and appreciative and proud I am to work with these colleagues on this Open Space Advisory Committee. Just a great group of folks. And I'll note that Councilmember Washington and Councilmember Oro both were great committee members too, and then moved on to bigger and better things. And so I'm glad that they have stayed in government and moved up the ladder. And I especially want to thank Nance for kind of leading us and shepherding us through our committee through this whole process that's going on these last few months, and really kind of helped keep us organized and clarify matters and bring up important points. And Mark, I'm sorry, Councilmember Joseph, I think Nance might have all the copies of those meetings. I was keeping all of mine till I found out Nance was, and then so I'm not sure, Nance. You might still have all of those if you want to go back and look at them. Yeah, that looks like a yes.
I actually have all but the last year and a half electronically.
Oh, good. We have an archive.
Okay. And I'm also proud to be part of this city and this city council that created our committee and is here listening to us and doing the work of government. And while I'm at it, I'll say I just think that the city has outstanding employees too. Brian Matern and Rick Hall, they provide the water to the tank at Newell Preserve so our volunteers can water the trees that they planted. Stacy Johnson, Elena Vince show up at the REI Day and help us lead a volunteer trail crew project. Teresa Gilfes, Liz Lozano, and formerly Sherry Cassidy to run our meetings. And I think we've got tremendous employees here, and you can't thank them. When you've got good people, you can't thank them enough. So I just want to say that to start out with. I was at the original meeting when the committee was formed. Nance Matson was there, Mark Joseph, Leon Garcia, and Bill Ross, I think. And what I recall is that the ask was that the council would grant the authority to the city manager, who was Mark Joseph at the time, to negotiate with Lynch Canyon, which is Solano Land Trust, and with the California Department of Fish and Game at the time, now they're Fish and Wildlife, to manage public access at Newell Open Space Preserve and the wetlands. So not just to get public access, but to manage it. And the wetlands hasn't really been a problem of management that I can tell. But in terms of Newell Open Space Preserve, every other open space that I'm aware of, Solano Land Trust, the Land Trust in Napa County, the Napa Open Space District, and Skyline Park, each have at least one dedicated employee. At the Land Trust, he's called the Land Steward. At Open Space District, he's called the Parks Maintenance Specialist. We don't have a big enough property to dedicate one full-time employee. So I think maybe that was why it made sense to me initially that we talk about having help managing this as part of another group that does this regularly. For the Open Space District, Rick Fessenden has all of the properties that we own. There's 5 or 6 major parks that the Open Space District owns and manages, and that's one employee. But he knows how to lead volunteer projects. And he can manage that by figuring out what the priorities are. But the main thing is he's the person that knows what's going on. He's the one you ask if there's a problem, or that you tell if there's a problem. And then he decides, okay, this is a priority, this is not. But it's taken care of. I forget the guy's name at Skyline Park, but I had a chance to talk to him recently for our open space annual gathering. And I asked him, what happens if a tree goes down and blocks a trail at Skyline Park? He said it's removed the next day or within 2 or 3 days, depending how big the job is. So that's best practices for all around the region that I can tell. I could talk of other Angwin, PUC Angwin. So we don't have that at Newell. And the closest we came was when Shalon was here. And I thought things were looking up, but then Shalon left and the city decided not to reappoint her position. And so in terms of management of the property, I think that we still haven't achieved what I thought we set out to do. I mean, we've got open space, yeah. And I know that the Open Space Committee advised City Council after going to Ring Mountain in Corte Madero at the behest of Todd Novak, who was on the committee at the time. We looked at it, they don't have a full-time ranger there. So we came back to the city and said, look, here's an example, open every day, public access, no full-time ranger. But that didn't mean that you just completely ignore it, that you don't have any employees. Someone's got to go up there from time to time and check on it, hopefully on a regular basis. You can't just depend on citizens to call things in and say, hey, you better go take a look at this. I mean, I don't know. I'm up there a lot watering trees. Hikers come down, I talk to them, they tell me what's going on. They tell me cattle is loose or a gate is stuck, but I learned things from talking to them. And so I think we would really benefit from having even a part-time presence up there. I know we can't do a full-time, but and I know Director Ikeda is new and is formulating the plans, and I'm hoping that there'll be something in there where there is a bit more presence. I know part of the problem is that the city residents have a champagne wish list on a beer budget. So that puts a lot of pressure on city council to figure out, and department heads and even staff, okay, what's the most important thing to do here? Because you can't do it all. And I really want people, I encourage people to come in and get involved with the city, to go to meetings, whether it's planning commission, parks and community services, open space, and find out what's going on here and look and see and learn. And maybe when they go to complain, they'll go home and say, well, it's more complicated than I thought. Or maybe they'll say, okay, I understand the revenues are limited, but let me get onto one of those committees so I can help guide the city into what I think the citizens are saying is important to them. Or maybe they just say, okay, if the city residents are not going to tax themselves to take care of the trails at Newell Preserve, let me go up there with my shovel, let me volunteer and go up there and be part of a work crew. And that the work crews are really important to all the other open space properties that I know of. And those land stewards that I'm talking about, they're very adept at leading those crews. They know, they have the skills and qualifications to supervise people who aren't normally up there. And that, I think, was the whole point of the workers' comp work that Shalon did in the city, so that we could have volunteer trail crew, but and they would be insured. But you need somebody that knows what they're doing to lead it. You need that kind of a person, and it could be a volunteer, but in all the other places I know of, it's a paid staff, and they lead it. And I've been asked to lead events, and I've said, look, I don't feel comfortable just for the liability. I'm the person that's leading it. I want a city staff person there. I'll come in and help advise, or come up with some crazy plan to do work on a trail. Yeah, but I don't want to take responsibility for leading it. I want the protection of having a city employee there that is an official, that represents the city officially in a paid status. So that's that. The funding, yeah, is a problem. I think the forum that's provided by Open Space Committee and all of the committees is that citizens can come in and petition their government, complain, bring ideas, ask questions. I want people to be engaged, because I think that's when government works best. When you get the largest diversity of opinion and perspective, it's more information. The more information you have, I think the better decisions you can make. So I think having this out there, and also the committee members are ambassadors for the city too. If I'm up at Newell, I'm watering, people come by and ask me questions, I'm telling them, oh, are they paying you up here, or are you're a city employer? No, I'm a volunteer. I'm on the Open Space Committee. So we're doing that outreach work too. Or at a community, at a party, somebody's asking a question about open space. Well, our committee members can answer a lot of those questions. So I think it's valuable for that. In terms of the meetings, I would be fine with a meeting every other month. And by my math, that would cut the costs in half. And I would even say you could do it quarterly. But after a while, the benefit isn't as much, because you're going from a half to a third. The big one is every other month, you cut it in half. But I think you could do quarterly. I think it still provides that forum. I think we can still work on the issues, and I think that would work. And if that's an issue, that would be fine. The two main things right now are the general plan for me and the road maintenance. The general plan, we were given a plan that's the Newell management plan when the property was donated. The Coastal Conservancy paid for it. It's almost like an environmental impact report. It's got the geology, the cultural, the biology, the benefits of the conservation easement, or the reasons why you're doing a conservation easement. One of them is public access. One of them is conservation. And the family that donated wanted the cattle grazing to continue too. So all these the values of the conservation easement, and they're listed in that plan. But it doesn't tell us where to keep the cattle. where to let them go. What happens when the cattle get on the trail and muck up the trail in the winter, and you have these big potholes and people are twisting their ankle when they're going to hike? And do you keep the cattle out of the creek? And, you know, do you plant trees? And how do you maintain the roads? What's your standard for the road? Well, do you want it gravel? Do you want it year round? Do you want to let the weeds grow up in the winter and then you have to wait until May or June to do the bird survey before you can go up? There's all these questions that haven't been answered yet. So for me, we never really completed the management of it. And then specifically, one that I've been harping about, we had a landslide in October, and it was up on the North Loop Trail. And it looked to me like it nearly took out the road on a very steep section. And as long as I've been up at Newell, I've been worried about those roads and losing a road. And I called up Bill Birmingham from RCD, who had done the grading project, to ask him for advice. Now, I also talked to Lena Palastro at the Land Trust recently about this. And Lena said, well, when they did the grading project for the Land Trust properties, there was a 2-year clause where if anything went wrong, you could come back. Well, we had 2 dry years, nothing went wrong. Then we had a big rain and we got a landslide. When Keith Caldwell was here, he put a bunch of rock piles for us. He would go up, and he was the caretaker, and he did all kinds of work up there, putting in culverts, and he would mow it, he would blade it. And he left us 2 big rock piles, one down by the barn and one up at the campground, for these types of event when you have a landslide. It's pretty common when you go around to other open space to see rock placed in landslides. Some places they use it as a garbage dump, but they throw stuff in there to stop the erosion. They'll throw old machinery in there, but rock is pretty common. There's a lot of places at Newell already that have rock. And when Bill Birmingham did the regrading of the upper Newell, where there's stream crossings, he put a ton of rock in those places. He brought that rock level all the way up to the level of the trail, and he ran it all the way down to the stream. So it's anchored and it's all supported. And I asked him for advice. And if anybody I'll share the link that he gave me, that he sent me. And he really wanted me to do biological control. He wanted to do planting. He wanted me to do willow fence. He didn't want me to do the rock. And I'm like, the rains are coming. We had a big one in October. We got a big one in December. And every time I would step in there, my feet would push all the dirt down the hill. I was pushing more dirt down the hill than I'd ever be able to save by putting in plantings. And also I would argue the plantings were in there and it failed. It slid. It had plantings. So, but Bill did send me one thing and said there's a technique called rock mulch. So it's like mulch around your tree. You put it down there, it conserves moisture, it prevents weeds growth, but it's only a single layer. And what it does is it stops the rain from hitting that soft clay. That soft clay will melt like butter. It also stops the force of the water that's now coming down the trail and going off the trail and dropping 4 feet. It's a cutting force. So when you put the rock there, the water hits it and it stops. So I went and took that rock and I put it up there, a single layer. It took me a week. I finished one day before the big storms in December. And I waited after the storms. I came back, I looked at it, and I was surprised. It held up really well. None of the rock really slid or moved. And actually there was dirt starting to accrue on top of the rock. So what that tells me is when that water stream is coming down, it's carrying soil in it, sediment. It hits the rock, it stops, that soil can settle out. And those rocks are starting to fill in right now with dirt, and they will reseed on their own. And that was all good. And the storm that it survived was a big storm. And we know that because it caused 3 new landslides. So the 3 new landslides that didn't fall in October, but they slid in December. And they're just down the road, and they're coming closer to the road than this one was. So I'm concerned about that. I went up there, we hiked with the public works director and the senior engineer for the city. And I've talked to Nance about this, and Nance recalls them saying that this should be an easy fix. This is a utilities maintenance department kind of thing. I don't quite recall that, but I'll take Nance's word for it. But, and I was told I'm not allowed to go back. I'm not getting more rock. When we had the third landslides, I said, I'll just go do the same thing, but I couldn't because I didn't have any more rock. And I had to call the city manager and no more rock, no more placing rock up there by Barry. And what, I guess what I'm saying is, I think that the rock that we put in there was helpful, was successful. And I'm concerned that if we don't do anything on the other 3 lower ones, that we'll lose the road, because it's cutting in a V shape uphill. And then I don't have clarity on this because I don't know what utilities and maintenance are capable of doing if it does slide. Can they go in with a bulldozer and just cut deeper into the hill? And, you know, bulldozer in one day and they fix it? That's all it is? I don't know. That creates a steeper grade up above it, though. Maybe that causes its own problems. So I'm not a civil engineer. I can't say that. I don't know what the other fixes that might be possible are. But if we don't do anything, I think if we get another big storm, one of those 3 landslides is actually touching the tire marks of a road. It'll cut in and it'll go down. And for the hikers and the bikers, it's probably not a big problem for them. They can just cut new trail, walk down the hill, walk up the hill. But we lose the maintenance road.
Mr. Christian, may I interrupt? Mr. Mayor, may I have a point of order really quick? Mr. Christian, with all due respect, you're talking about a lot of technical things that are probably aspects of everything that we're discussing tonight. And you're getting very specific on things. I'm hoping that we can get to our point a little bit quicker, because the examples you're citing are things that should be a discussion. We shouldn't be talking about in detail everything that's being said here, because it's a lot for us to digest. I think the matter before us isn't necessarily fixing that road.
Your point's well taken. I feel that as my job as an open space advisory committee member is to advise the city. And my advice to the city right now is that if something's not done, the next big rainstorm could cause us to lose the road. And that means the firefighters can't get up there. They're called fire roads. It means the maintenance can't get up there. It means the medical evacuation, first aid can't get up there if somebody has a heart attack up there. And it means the police can't get up there if they're chasing a crook. So that's what I'm saying. And I'm coming to you guys because I've already tried going to staff.
Well, Ms. Christian, really appreciate your perspective. You have some very important points. And I think the main one is we need to have a maintenance plan. Renewal open space. You're correct in saying initially that was a fire protection road. Our former fire chief, Keith Caldwell, mentioned, as you mentioned him, he'd also mentioned to the community. That's why he maintained it that way. But I think putting together a work plan is a whole other conversation that we would need to have. I think you pointed out some very good examples in it. But that's a project to be developed further with open space and in the city. But I do appreciate your comments this evening. Thank you.
The last thought is not related to that, is that the Napa Valley Transportation Authority has an active transportation advisory committee. And it used to be called the Bicycle Advisory Committee. They changed the name to make it the Active Transportation Advisory Committee. So when we're talking about, I don't have a big problem with calling the Open Space, Napa Open Space Advisory Committee, the Open Space and Bicycle Advisory Committee. I'm just saying that NVTA went away from the BAT designation to make it Active Transportation Advisory.
It was far more, it felt to be more inclusive by
I think so. Yeah, it's pedestrians and
exactly
everybody else.
Right. Okay, thank you. Member McClinton Horner.
Hello all. I would like to express my appreciation for this meeting and with the council and city staff. And I appreciate my fellow members' comments too. I think you guys have all done a really good job, supporting our committee. I just wanted to add a couple more things. In addition to Newell, we also have, more projects upcoming that are unfinished. For example, we have more work to do with the Bay Trail, the Vine Trail, the Ridge Trail, the River to Ridge Trail. In addition to Clark Ranch and other activities that we've been helping to facilitate. Also, most of us have relationships with other partner agencies, like RCD. Barry was mentioning some of the committees that like the Vine Trail, and we have like friendships and relationships, and I think that also helps support our cause and advocate for our community, both inside and outside of American Canyon, in addition to advocating for our own community here and our spaces that we want to protect. So I think that we have more. It isn't just Newell. I mean, that's a big part of it, but open spaces include other undeveloped lands that are preserved for nature, biodiversity, recreation also. And that's all. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yes, I think it's important that we develop relationships between other organizations out there. I think it's kind of a mutual way of achieving objectives for the betterment of the community. Other comments? And I'll return it back to City Council for the discussion. How we want to move this.
Mr. Mayor, may I recommend that we open it up for public comment now?
Certainly. I just want to make my comment here before we do that. Just appreciate Chair Nat Patson's comments this evening as well. I think it kind of helps us have a better understanding of objectives, what's achievable, and probably sets us on a plan for more clear definition of the work plan and organization of the Space Committee. So I thank you all for your comments. With that, I'll open it up for public comment. Do we have anybody on the line?
Mayor Garcia, I have Justin Hamilton Hole. Go ahead, Justin.
Good evening. Hello.
Good evening.
We're back in the zoo. I'm at Claire open space. I think we had a good teamwork. Yeah, I did make a little comment. Barry doing great thing. What he do, open space. I think you all doing good work. You're like just doing teamwork. I hear all this good thing. I'm gonna tell you guys good work on team.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. I have no other hands raised.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Well, Council, we've heard some very good input this evening, and certainly speaks to the need for us to consider a work plan for Open Space Advisory Committee. I think the clarity, my sense is there seems to be an ongoing recognition of a need for a standing committee. That being the case, other than that, we have an ad hoc. We have those two definitions roughly stated by City Manager Colley on how those organizations would work. I think we need to make a decision around that in our deliberation on this issue somewhere down the road. With that, I don't know who's out. Councilmember Oro.
Thank you for the floor, and I'm glad I got to hear everyone comment on this. And first of all, I heard comments tonight about valuing the work and, recognizing the stewardship and the things that you have done for the city of American Canyon. And quite frankly, it's amazing. Absolutely love it. In fact, could we imagine having this pandemic without the wetlands trails being open or the new open space being open? It's actually changed the whole vibe and character of the city to have those places. And I want to thank you guys for all that work. I was there for the early parts of it. And it's just, I'm still in awe when I get on that trail and think that, when I first moved to this city, I was part of something that actually gained access to that. What I heard tonight, though, was a little bit different. And I think there's a couple of ways to approach this. And I have some questions about it, and I would love for you guys to think about it. And I have a couple of concerns. First of all, Barry doing all this work is concerning. This means that we need a proper management for this open space. And I'm willing to say that if we value it enough, and it seems like we value it because we wanted it, and we've had a committee here that's coming up close to 20 years, that we should probably appoint or hire somebody to at least do it part-time, if not full-time. There's plenty of work to go around to manage both grant writing, resources management, and partnering with the community of volunteers to do this. In the future and in the long term, I think this is something that we're going to need to do. As Mr. Christian pointed out, other places at least have a part-time steward for our open space. I think as a council and as a city, we ought to be looking towards that sooner rather than later. I know that we have a backfill for somebody who's sort of a hybrid for this, but maybe that's something that we can do. And Mr. Hall, you can probably talk about that a little bit later as soon as we're done with our comments here. So I would be in favor of doing that. And then as I look through the work plan too, I think it's noble, but for me, I'm still leaning towards Councilmember Washington's idea. I think a lot of this can actually fall under the Parks and Services Committee. The Clark Ranch Master Plan is just kind of sitting there. The Eco Center is outside of that. The Jaeger Open Space is something that's happening that is coming to the council. It's the no management plan and the anticipated topics there. And I think we could probably use a subcommittee of citizens for that, working closely with PCS to go over that. And that could be a real committee kind of thing that we do, maybe like how we did for water and other things, and get more people involved and engaged. And once that plan is done, it should go back to the employee who is a city employee to make sure that happens. We're getting a lot more, I'm getting particularly a lot more attention of the Newell open space in terms of how it's maintained out there. Cattle seem to be an ongoing issue and problem amongst walkers and bikers. Do we really need the cattle there for that kind of stuff if we really want to make it a pleasant open space for people? I think that's going to come out in the Newell management plan. And I'm looking forward to those discussions. I'm leaning towards, I think we need to rethink this whole process in terms of how we manage it, how we get community input to it, and how we can leverage existing resources as needed. It may look like this, it may look like something else, it may look what's in this packet, but I think there's probably a better way to do this. The other thing that I am not necessarily comfortable with is centers around focus. The Open Space Advisory Committee has been very successful because they were focused on two things. One thing, getting access to open space. And that charter was for Newell, and the other charter was for the Wetlands Trail access. And you continued that focus for a long time here to giving us the parks that we have today. By doing Open Space Advisory Committee with active, what are we calling it? I'm just going to call it the bike trail plan, the bike management plan, expanding the purview, I think we're going to lose focus. Personally, I would love to see have a separate bike committee rather than actually have a combined committee of open space and biking. I think biking has definitely its issues that can use a lot of attention. And, you know, we've been sitting on a bike plan for a while, and I think there's a lot of work to be done there. And I don't know if that's done as a subcommittee to the Parks Commission or, again, another citizen committee, kind of like the Blue Ribbon Water Committee, to get more people involved. So those things, focus, and then in terms of dedicating city resources to this properly and not letting, you know, a road go down over 3 months during a winter storm. There should be somebody up there right away, and it shouldn't be Barry that's doing that. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Joseph.
Yes, I appreciate all the input from the commissioner or the committee members and my council colleagues. For me, the philosophy I have with this committee, as well as with the PCS and even the Planning Commission, is that you're an advisory body to the council. And in that capacity, I would like to see the relationship be a closer linkage. For example, when the annual work plan is being presented or when a specific project is completed, that ought to be provided to us, to the council, via the chairperson of that committee versus a staff liaison. I guess for me, I think the direct connect between the committee and the council is essential. And when it's filtered through staff, there's a tendency to lose a little bit of that focus, that the nuances, if you will. And so that's my general philosophy towards this body as well as to the others. I also think the functional roles of this committee, as with the others, is first and foremost to do policy research and recommendations. Second, to be a sounding board to react to other ideas and proposals. And lastly, to provide program oversight. The city manager's explanation kind of discounted that role, but I disagree. I think you need somebody not to hear complaints, everybody gets to complain, but to actually oversee what's being proposed, partly because it's a second set of eyes, and I think there's merit to that, partly because sometimes staff will miss something and a community body may pick up on it. And so I do think that this committee, as well as the commissions, serve those important roles. Now, for me, a few specific issues. First and foremost, in contrast to the idea that maybe this committee ought to go away or be redefined, I would propose the opposite, that there's a third option that hasn't been brought forth, and I'll bring it forth now. You can promote this committee to a full commission and provide them with the same stipend that the Parks and Community Services Commission gets. If we value open space, if it is essentially, becoming part of our DNA as a community, then why not make the Open Space Advisory Commission, or why not make it a commission to represent the significance that open space plays? And if you see the role of this commission as to provide open space stewardship, which they've done an outstanding job over the years, but also add that active transportation component that kind of crept in there. And I would argue on behalf of climate action advocates that maybe the whole issue of sustainability might be in the purview of this new commission. So I do think it has a bigger role to play, and I would certainly advocate that we promote it to a commission status. Likewise, the annual meetings, I think those are essential. And if we forget to do them over a period of years, I think we have problems. And so certainly at least an annual meeting where you can talk about progress over the last year as well as your future work plan. The other idea to consider, because of the nature of what this role is, and in terms of workload distribution, maybe this commission could be assigned to Public Works because of the active transportation and the roads and open space. These are all areas that are as much public works as they are recreation. Now, as far as one last thing, looking at the work plan and looking at the draft resolution, just a suggestion, we should probably streamline the resolution and beef up the work plan. I think the resolution needs to be broader concepts without the specificity that's in there. The work plan, on the other hand, ought to be a little more clear as to what we can expect and when. Lastly, as it relates to staffing, I think the city managers talked about the idea of taking a rec coordinator with a broader scope that hopefully can provide some of that grant writing and project management that we're looking for, that we're missing. But there's another option, and that is in the conservation easement itself, it does allow for a caretaker to live on site. And it's something we might want to consider, in which we provide a trailer with solar energy and so forth, in exchange for somebody who will kind of be the caretaker. They may not be able to do everything that we want, but if you combine the rec coordinator position that's being proposed along with this caretaker, you might begin to have some kind of level of staffing continuity that can improve the quality of the program. Beyond that, getting away from this discussion and getting into another issue, sooner or later, all of the commissioners are up for reappointment and we do a selection process. And even though this is totally off topic, it is somewhat related. And that is, down the road, we need to talk about how we go about the selection process itself. Not just, the open, it's great to be transparent, but I think we need to look at that selection process, whether we can provide a level of discretion in asking questions and so forth, as well as the nature of those questions themselves. Obviously, that isn't tonight's meeting, but put that on somebody's parking lot, because I think it's an issue we also need to address. So to summarize, I think we should promote this committee to a commission. I think we ought to consider expanding its role to active transportation that it more or less has, and possibly sustainability. Make sure we have an annual meeting, consider reassigning it, streamline the resolution and enabling actions, and there are some staffing options to look at. So that's my feedback, that's my suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Joseph. That's what a task you put together. I would offer also, if we're, sounds like I'm hearing more move in the direction of a permanent, well, I wouldn't call it a committee. That would probably either commission or something standard, or standing committee, which has more permanence than an ad hoc, or a commission. I think it's important to, of course, also to examine the roles and responsibility, how we put out Park and Community Services and Planning Commission, because we haven't looked at those in relationship to OCS. And there obviously are some overlapping areas that's going to cause some confusion. So we need to look at how we're going to manage that. Councilmember Washington.
Yeah, again, I'll be brief. And I got to say that I'm in alignment with the majority of the things that Councilman Oral and Councilmember Joseph had said. Not total agreement, but in alignment with a lot of them. One that stood out more than the other was when Councilmember Oral mentioned that it should be two separate when you start talking about the bicycles committee. I agree that should not be united with the OSAC. I mean, there's a lot of issues concerning that, and I think there are certain people that like Councilmember Oral that can bring to the table when it comes to biking, because that's what they do. I know Barry Christian, you do a lot of bicycling out as well. I think that when Councilmember Joseph mentioned about OSAC going to staff, I mean, we go back to the roles and responsibilities. Staff doesn't work for OSAC. And, I can't recall in the last 18 months where we may have had a report to the council about concerns. And that's concerning. So again, back to Councilmember Oral's things about being focused. I think that might be a problem, that The focus is not completely there as it was when it originally came into form. And I'm all about, making a business case. And I haven't heard a business case to say, there was a business case initially, but now that we're trying to find out where we are today, after, like I mentioned earlier, mission accomplished on the initial reason for forming the commission or the group, I don't see the business case moving forward. Maintaining what we have, if we put it into park services, to me, that makes more sense. Something more organized, that we have more control over. And again, going back to, I think it was Council Member Joseph mentioning that, just having those reports. I mean, I don't remember receiving, updates, and we should have it, bi-yearly or biannually. But I'm more of an operational kind of guy. And I agree that no one in the OSAC committee, especially you, Barry, should be out there as much as you're out there doing the work that you're doing. It's great that you're doing it, but it's not safe. The liability is high, and we take ownership of that liability. So reorganizing a committee or a group is hard initially, but you got to build the business case of why we're doing it.
Councilmember Oro.
Thank you. I'll be brief as well. Mr. Mayor, I think you were hinting at a direction that we were headed. I actually hear several different ways that this could go. And I don't think there's a consensus forming at all here. I think there's some points of agreement, but I think there's different ways that this is going. And I just want to say, the permanent commission of doing that, I think that would be interesting to explore, but I think we should do this after we have our joint park services commission meeting, and to get more knowledge as a body, as a council, and then have that discussion with them, and maybe reconvene as a council about this and have that discussion. And I think staff has a little bit of work to do to align some of these things of what could be done in the work plan with a parks commission and what really is needed for an open space advisory committee. I think those things need to be understood before we give direction on this, because that may change depending on what we hear from the Parks Commission. They may say, oh, we can handle this, or we're not doing that, or you guys are definitely dropping the ball on this and we need that. And I would just like to understand that. And then I think staff owes us a little bit more information about that. And I don't necessarily think I need, the 3 pages of what commissions and committees are all about, but literally just, what can we achieve as an organization, as committees, or as commissions, and what needs to be done. And I think we'll have a better understanding of that. And like as Council Member Washington said, that will help us understand how we operationalize this and how we apply resources to it, because everybody wants to help.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think for me, it's also, we have to have some sort of analysis on costs. And as I said before, there's what are the overlapping areas. So your point's well taken. I think to me, Parks and Community Services Commission is another point of contact we have to have in this conversation. Likewise, bicycles are part of it. It's in Planning Commission, part of it is in OSAC. So how do we work with areas where there's overlapping direction? Councilmember Washington, you're up again.
Councilman Joseph was going for it, but I could be real brief. I also want to highlight something that we haven't even mentioned. We come up with all these ideas of what we're going to do, and the goal is to have City Manager Holly do all these things. Where we may sit there and say we have one thing that we want to work on a workload type mindset, but we got to remember that he has 100 other buckets that he's trying to work on, and this is just one bucket. I'm not saying it's a small bucket, but we could dream all day long but we have to be realist, and we have to have a business case. And that's the point that we got to realize is that, you know, I look at it as a business and running an organization. There's a whole lot of I likes and I would dream to have type ideals, but in order for the city to run smoothly and not take from someplace else that we probably need money, we got to keep that in mind too. So not to put in a plug for Jason, but just to make everyone aware that he has about 100 buckets that he has to fill and take from.
Very good. Councilmember Joseph.
Well, and that is certainly a good point, although by the same token, the reason we have department heads is so that the city manager isn't doing everything, because if that's the case, you only get as much as one person can get done. So there is a business case to be made that you have lieutenants that do these kinds of things, and even within the department, you have division managers and coordinators. So the idea of delegation of responsibility addresses a lot of the workload there. The point I was going to make, though, is that the idea of making it a commission is certainly something I would support, but I agree. It ought to be something we look at after we've talked to all the groups and begin to get a better sense of where we go. The one argument in favor of consolidating responsibilities rather than creating separate committees is really hearkening back to the city manager's analysis. And that is, the more committees you create, the more staff you are creating, and there becomes a real workload issue. So if you have one commission that has 2 or 3 functional areas, you know, there's certainly staff involved, but you get kind of an economy of scale, if you will, if you're only dealing with one set of minutes instead of 2 or 3, one meeting instead of 2 or 3, and so forth. So part of the reason I'm looking at this as saying, what can you consolidate and add to this commission is precisely from an economical point of view. You don't want to create too much of an administrative burden just holding the meeting. So that's the rationale for why I'm talking about combining active transportation, maybe sustainability, and certainly the open space stewardship that we've appreciated all these years. Beyond that, I do think staffing's an issue, and there are a couple of angles that we can look at. And beyond that, I think it's important, and I think Councilmember Oro makes a good point. We ought to listen to the joint session planning for the PCS and see how it all fits together. Thank you.
I would add to that, OCS member Christian raised a good point too. They have to meet every month, it would sound like, you know, every other month, quarterly. There's another way of being able to make it more, I guess, operationally effective in terms of time for commission meetings and the expense that goes with that as well. Okay. Any other comments from council? Good conversation, a lot of points. Mr. Hawley, your thoughts? Have you captured the discussion?
Yes, Mayor, taking a lot of notes and listening. We don't have yet scheduled the joint session with PCS. They will be meeting at their regular time in June. So my sense of what we'll try to calendar with the council and PCS will be sometime in July, would be my guess. I don't think we'll be able to do a quick turnaround in June. So I'll be looking to start calendaring that in July. Been taking notes on some of the potential information. We might start kind of framing out some of the different ideas we heard, you know, kind of a spectrum of ideas. One being, you know, essentially, you know, not moving forward with an open space advisory committee, moving some of those responsibilities over to the PCS. We heard another end of the spectrum that would be a promotion or expansion of the role of OSAC to a commission, a paid commission with formalizing its relationship to bicycle and trails and sustainability. And so, you know, I think we kind of have the existing kind of course of action, if you will, and the expanded course of action under the draft resolution in the packet. So we kind of have four areas or 4 pathways, and we'll, you know, start to kind of noodle on what that is, what that framework looks like. And I do notice, Mayor, that Vice Mayor Adamus does have her hand raised.
Yes, I noticed that too. Vice Mayor Abadamas, comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry that I dropped off for a little bit. I had a fussy little one that I needed to attend to. I just wanted to put in my 2 cents really quickly. Based on what I heard, I don't believe that OSAC is an entity that needs to be dissolved. I definitely feel the passion in the group. The fact that they're fighting so hard for it speaks to that passion. I also think that we definitely need the maintenance aspect, the park maintenance, and like Commissioner Christian mentioned, park ranger, things of that nature. I think that that needs to be incorporated. And if there's some way that we can rework OSAC to do maybe less meeting and more volunteer work and recruiting volunteers and getting a lot of that stuff done, I think it could be a very successful organization. Not that it's not successful already. It's done a lot in its tenure. It is a very successful organization, and it is staffed with an amazing group of volunteers. Each and every one of you know how highly I think of you. So I don't think I need to go on and on about that, but I like the idea of incorporating, like Councilmember Joseph said, bikes and pedestrian, and I'm sure other people weighed in on that too. I'm sorry if I missed it. I just don't think that I'm ready to dissolve OSAC. Maybe less frequent meetings and more of maybe growing a larger volunteer base that OSAC can direct and guide into getting things done instead of, you know, just talking about it, if that makes sense. And I don't mean that offensively. We as a council talk a lot. So if I'm going to say that about you, I'm going to say that about us too.
Well, as I've often said, meetings last as long as we want to talk. So it's all not demeaning it at all. It's just something that's very productive. So I thank you for it.
So yes, Mayor, I think we have the notes and the information we need. I guess, again, it'll be July when we have a joint session with PCS. We can see where that conversation wants to go and then decide some next steps at that point.
Good. All right. Thank you. Well, that being said, I think it's more of an information evening. I feel, you know, I appreciate all the input. It's been very informative. And I think it kind of gives us, at least in my mind, some generation of ideas about opportunities out there, about being more effective, about examining always the work we do, whatever part of the city organization it is, to increase value to the community and effective operations. So I appreciate that. Thank you all for being here this evening. I think we've concluded our business for the evening and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.